So good evening, everyone. I think we can get started. I apologize. I had trouble accessing the Zoom, so I cannot see everyone at once from my computer. I believe we have several board members on. Steve, can you tell me if we have quorum?
I don't think so. We have voting members, yourself, Peter, and Laura. I don't think there are any other voting members. I believe two more.
Okay. Well, I think we should get started. I do want to welcome everyone, including all of our guests. I'm just happy that everyone could come here this evening and spend their personal time working towards the betterment of Harlem Link Charter School. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do I have a second?
I second. This is Laura. Hi.
So for this evening's agenda, I hope everyone has received it. We have a special session at the end of the general meeting, which is to go into executive session. So for those of you who have not participated in that previously, when we call for the executive session, we will split the group into two. We have created a breakout room so that those who are non-voting members will go into the breakout room if they so wish until the session is over, or you can transition off the call, no hard feelings. Today's executive session will be a discussion of new board members and a vote. And that's why I'm hoping that we'll have the quorum that we need.
I think we just got it. We just got a quorum.
Okay, great. Excellent.
And welcome to Ken and Edward.
Thank you. Welcome, Ken and Edward. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is the consent agenda for the October 2021 minutes. Is there anyone who is objecting to the minutes from that meeting? And I apologize. If there are any objections, if you would please raise your hand. Is that motion carried then to accept those minutes?
Yeah.
So accepted. Okay, look, at the next agenda item is for our treasurer's report. I believe Doug is with us.
Yes. Before we begin, I'm going to jump in and let our auditors go first so we don't hold them hostage. So I will let Gus and James take it away first.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Gus and James.
Thanks. Thank you all for having us. I'm just going to turn it over to James. James can go ahead and give like an overview of the audit and just go over some highlights. But we're here to answer any questions you may have. So James, you can take it away.
Thanks, Gus. Thank you, everyone. I can share my screen to go through the financial statements if that works for everybody. Just a quick overview on the audit itself. The audit's been wrapped up. It was as clean an audit as it could be really this year. It was a difficult year for everybody working remote in some sort of hybrid fashion for most of the year, but we got the audit out on time. We didn't have any difficulties really at all. Some of the issues that we've had in previous years with student files and credit cards were cleared up this year. So there were no deficiencies, no weaknesses, no management letter recommendations. So altogether, it was about as clean an audit as it could be. So thank you to Doug and to his team for that. So I'll jump right into the statements really. And if I'm going to go through some of the highlights as Gus mentioned. If you have any questions or if there's anything specific that you'd like me to get into, just feel free to stop me or interrupt me at any time. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so the first couple of pages is really just our opinion. It's going to be it was an unmodified clean opinion. It's the best opinion you can get. And moving right into the statement of financial position, cash up this year. A lot of that is due to the influx of the PPP funding. So cash went up about 1.5 million. So we operated at a surplus, which we'll get into in a minute. And also the big thing on the balance sheet here is the PPP loan payable, which was forgiven right after year end. I think July 12th was the actual date that the loan was forgiven. So it's still liability as of June 30th, but will be shown on the statement of activities next year. Just a couple of other things here while we're at the statement of financial position. Some of the things that are indicators of financial health is the current assets as compared to the current liabilities. Really shows the school's ability to meet its short-term obligations. So if you look at last year, again, healthy last year, but even healthier this year, actually. So that's good, that's positive. And even a more conservative ratio that we look at is the cash and the grants receivable as compared to the current liabilities. So really just a good position overall for the school financially. Moving into the statement of activities, revenue was really kind of flat this year, up about 1%, $120,000. Expenses was up this year, almost 9%, about $750,000. When we get into the statement of functional expenses, a lot of that is due to salaries and benefits and payroll taxes. Those are your two biggest expenses. We added 8 employees this year. So between those two, we went up almost $1 million. That gets offset by some of the other expenses that we've seen that have gone down as a result of the pandemic, things like supplies and student field trips, things like that. So even though expenses went up quicker than revenue went up, or at a rate higher than revenue, we still operated a surplus this year, about $145,000. So that's good. Moving into the statement of cash flows is really just a change in net assets reconciled to the change in cash. So again, the big one here is the PPP loan, which we'll get into in some of the notes disclosures also, but that'll be part of the statement of activities next year as it was forgiven in July. As far as the notes are concerned, most of these are pretty standard from last year. Just a couple of things. The concentration of revenue and support is one of our more sensitive disclosures. That's note 8. Note 7, concentration of credit risk. Note 10 is the PPP loan. Again, here, last sentence was forgiven July 12th, 2021. So that'll be on the statement of activities next year. We do have the risk and uncertainties note, which is a standard note that we have for all of our clients related to the pandemic. And the last few pages is our gas report. That's really where we would have any deficiencies or material weaknesses or recommendations, which this year there are none. Like I said, very clean audit. And the last page really is just a status of the prior year findings. Like I said, credit cards, student records, that's been an issue in some of the previous years. So those were cleared up this year. And just as an aside, when we have findings like we had in previous years with things like credit card to student records, we do actually test more in the following year. So really those records were all cleaned up this year, which is a good thing. Just another thing about the statement of activities I forgot to mention, there is about 87% of total expenses going to program. That's up from last year. About 85% went to program services last year. So we consider that's a positive trend. But as Gus can speak to also, we are compiling our ratios and benchmarks that we send every year. That'll be out sometime in January. We'll send that to you guys. But I did go back and see where you guys kind of fall as compared to other schools that are similar to you. So last year you were right in line with 85%, and trending in the right direction this year, moving up to 87%. So really all positive, I would say. But if you have any specific questions or any questions that I can answer, something I didn't cover, I'm happy to do that.
Any questions from the board or any other participants?
Yeah, I've got a question. Excuse me, and I don't know if this is for you, Doug, or for Jim, but if you go back to expenses,
Yep.
There was a significant increase this year in fundraising. no, I think you've scrolled too far. Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah. So fundraising was 203 versus 98, and I'm wondering what hit that line.
Yeah, that
Doug,
that caught my eye too, Ken.
And Doug, that may be a question for you.
Yes, I would have to go back and look. It may be how we classified I know Josh is in there.
But Josh was in there the year before as well.
Yeah, but we also had Ashley, who also helped out more so. And I would have to go look into that, and I can break that out to tell you exactly what the 203 was and what was the difference between that versus 98.
Yeah, I think we'd very much like to understand that.
Yeah, a lot of the functional expenses are just based on a time study that the school does. Then we take those percentages and apply them against all the other expenses, like, you know, all the other expenses. So if that time study went up, most likely other expenses would have gone up. So there had to be somebody that was added that did more fundraising this year than prior year.
Just the percentage. So we know during the pandemic, Josh specifically did more fundraising. So more of his salary go there. Ashley did the after school program, but she was also doing more of the fundraising. And I just would have to piece out the rest of it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. So yeah, I'd appreciate that, Doug.
No problem.
And Doug, just as a follow-up, what was the total amount raised last year?
Do we have that up on here, James?
Under operate, you should have it. I thought I saw it.
I'm not James is sharing. Do we have the total amount we received from fundraising on here, James?
Well, these are your contributions here. So about a 148, 149 this year, as opposed to 164 last year.
Gotcha.
And that was more, certainly it was more cash this year from individuals. And, you know, if the Morrison Alma Shapiro Foundation, we knew was going to be 25 less, and the 7,600 in 2020 was primarily gifts in kind. But it's a little, well, I guess we'll table it for now, but Doug, we'd really like to have that information before our next.
I'll get that out to you guys in the coming days.
Thank you.
And a quick question, is a part of this for James, this is also broken down into functionals, right?
Yes.
Can you scroll down just a bit? And let me see.
So I think you're on track probably because your big increase is here.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're at 150, 152-ish this year, as opposed to about 72 last year.
Okay.
We also added a few positions here, at 34 last year, 39 this year.
Okay. All right. So I'll break that out, and it could also be how we look at it. It could be a portion of mine as well, since even though I don't specifically fundraise, but just tracking it, the allocations of things. Again, just divvying up those portions of the salary. I think, Steve, you did some more fundraising as well, right? Last year.
It could be. I think we have to really search the cobwebs of my brain from this past year, but you know, Doug and I will put our heads together.
Yeah,
I think it's a lot of the same people, but how their time was allocated or on paper.
Yeah, I'm really a little confused, and as far as I can tell, we really did not add more personnel, and the amount of time, you know, please no offense, Doug or Steve, that either of you spent on fundraising in fiscal 2021 was, you know, minuscule. It didn't stand out to me as being greater than it had been in 2020. So I'm not really sure how we got to that number, because Ashley was with us in fiscal 2020. And other than a 2% cost of living increase, appreciably, there should not be that big a difference like that. So, I mean, we really need to take a look at how we're doing accounting to get to those numbers.
Okay. Yeah, and I know with Ashley, we also had the Timberland Foundation. We also had just a little different things. Again, it's just a breaking down of where we're allocating time to it. But I'll get the hard numbers for you in the coming days.
And just a reminder to all the board members, we are going to have a deep dive into the finances, and that's coming up soon. And so that was one of the items on our requested list, to have a breakdown of the financing, the fundraising budget and expenses, along with other things. So eventually we will ferret out what is happening exactly, and have some concrete answers for everyone.
So for Gus and James, are there any other questions from the board? Or anyone else? Okay. Well, I think that might be it for them. So just to wrap up, we had a strong audit. We are sound financially. The two issues that we had the preceding year, we was able to rectify those issues, and what Gus and James do once we have a finding. An example would be with our student files. Last year, they may have tested 25 student records. If there's a finding, they increase the numbers. I think we tested around 55 students. So what that says is that we're trending in the right direction. We was able to clean it up. We also had the issue with the credit cards. We moved away from the credit card, started writing more checks, which allowed us to, pull in and be compliant. So if that's it from the board, Gus and James, you're welcome to stay and laugh and joke with us, or you can go have fun.
Thank you. Thanks, Doug. Have a good night, everyone.
Oh, you're not going to stay? All right, I'll see you guys shortly.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
All right. And next, we're going to move over to the finance report for October.
Would you like me to share my screen and show that report?
Absolutely. Okay. Were you able to show the student budget information? Was that on the next page?
What is the student budget information?
That I have. Okay, you didn't put it in. So where it had, it's the information that Brandy asked for the last call, where we budget versus actual per student. I'll share my screen real quick. May I share? Okay. All right. Give me just 1 second as I put that up there. All right. So last board meeting, it was asked to break out what our current enrollment is. So currently we're at 377. We get $16,844 per student if the student stays with us from the start of school to the end of school. We budgeted 435. So the difference in dollar amount is essentially right under $1 million. That is $976,000. That's the difference in what we are facing with our current enrollment. I didn't put up SPED because we're kind of spot on with our SPED. With our SPED numbers, we budgeted 67 students, and we have 69 SPED students. And that's depending on the classification, that can be up to an additional $19,000. So for the purpose of projections and where what we're trending. The total budget from what we're looking to get for our per pupil was $8.6 million. Right now, we are looking at 7.6 if all things stay the same, and that would be an aggregate variance of $983,000. Any questions around our current student enrollment and projection? Okay. And I'm just going to go a little bit more in detail in our revenues, and then our expenses. I can do so if need so. So we have our contract for pre-K. That's 36 pre-K students. We get 10,800. As of Bets Day, which was sometime last month, we had 36 kids. So we are getting the full contract. So after Bets Day, if we don't have any pre-K students, we still would get the entire amount, because unlike our regular K through 5 students, the money fluctuates with our pre-K program. Once a kid is here on Bets Day, we get it. Anything after, we don't get anything, more or less. Wanted to highlight for our federal grants. Right now, we have a variance of an additional $1.1 million. What that is just for the purpose of recording the revenue now. This is from the PPP loan. So we got the PPP loan in 2000, but it was shown on our books as a liability. So that's what James pointed out before. We had to leave it on as a liability until we actually had the loan forgiven. Now that it's been forgiven, July 12th, we moved it off our balance sheet from a liability to actually revenue. So we see it in the revenue line. So it could be it can be somewhat misleading, because we've already, on paper, we spent the $1.1 million, but now we're actually saying we have it to spend. But it was earmarked and spent in 2020 fiscal year. Our contributions, we're looking to do well with our Giving Tuesday, which would be happening the week after next. Miscellaneous income, this is marked for the different money that we're receiving from our ESSAs, ESSA money, ESSA 1, ESSA 2, CSP, which is more around technology and grants. So we've gotten so much money. The purpose of it was to kind of try to account for it. Some of these grants are multi-year, so they go, the longest one goes to 2023. So depending on how we allocate and spend the money, we're trying to, have some of it reflected each school year. Any question around revenues? Okay.
Doug, I have a question around the COVID relief money.
Okay.
Is it possible to pull that money out and put it on a separate column? I mean, we're not anticipating continuously getting that money. Is that correct?
Correct. So pulling it out, and that would be us creating a new line. So the money that we're receiving are federal grants, right? So what I can do, I can parse it out, and it's showing under the federal grants funds. And then,
well, I don't want it on its own line. I'm referring to having a column so that we can see where on the budget it's being spent specifically. Because at the moment it's muddled into everything.
Are you saying how we spending it, on the expense lines?
Exactly.
Yeah, what I can do is, so what we have to do is every year we have to tag what's called tag it and show whatever agency that we spent the money and how we spent the money. What I can do is I can provide that report to the board as we are spending it down. Would that help?
Well, I don't know what that looks like, but if you could send us a sample, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions around revenues?
One of the things that strikes me here is that if you take that windfall out of the budget, I mean, that windfall covers our shortfall from enrollment. It's just like essentially a wash. And
Correct.
it makes things look a lot better than they actually are, unless we get enrollment up. And I think we should be conscious of that.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to jump down to the expenditures.
I just interject real fast. I think what Pete just said is the fiscal story of the year right now. I mean, aside from the fact that we're stable overall, John Barron's not on the call, but the word he used was the enrollment situation is not existential right now, but it is dire. And if we continue with numbers like this, the school won't survive over the course of years. So, you know, can't let the federal money mask the need to improve enrollment, and that's the next topic on the agenda. So we'll come back to it.
So I'm just going to point out some of the lines from my expenditures. I'm going to start with our benefits. Year to date, we have a surplus of $85,000. A large portion of that have to do with some savings around our health insurance policy. We budget a little higher this year. We budgeted for around a 13% increase, largely due to the pandemic, increase in possibly staff enrolling. What we were able to do is, you know, go back and forth with our carrier and get a favorable increase somewhere around, I think the effective rate is like 7.8. Historically, we normally see 9 to 10. So that some of that savings is there, and we will constantly see the savings as we roll up to each month, because the 85,000 is just from July to October. We've concluded open enrollment as of October 31st. So, and that has that closed. Next, I want to point out the office expense, as well as the curriculum and classroom, similar to last board report. I haven't had a chance to break down the office expense and curriculum classroom from our credit card and Amazon account. Amazon account per month is somewhere around, can be about 300 transactions. So it's very time consuming. And then our board report is earlier in the month now. Normally it's been around the third week in the month. So that gives me time to actually get all the bills in and break things down. When it gets to the first and second week, it's not enough time to get all the bills in, because bills are still coming in from the month, from the close of the month. And the finance committee have to get the report up a little bit early to have eyes on it. So we see that for the month that we're over 13,800 and 12,000, and for the year to date for office expense, we had 94,000 and 70,000. Also included in that is ordering for office and classroom is front loaded, meaning that we typically buy our supplies that we need for the school year at the beginning of the school year, and then as we progress, it tends to flatten out. So that's normal with our school, and that's normal throughout the sector. And then once we break the credit card and Amazon account, we should see the overall numbers won't change, just where they're parked, they would go into their prospective place. Going down a little bit to professional services. We have, right now we have 2 temps in our organization helping with making phone calls and active enrollment. We are attacking our enrollment shortage, as well as still marketing. So some of those expenses are showing there. And that's kind of a quick overview of the finances. Overall, we are in line. We're still strong with our enrollment. If we take the difference of the two, we would currently have a surplus of $149,000 at the close of October 31st. Any questions around expenses?
Just to be clear, and apologies, this is Brandolyn. I'm in the office today, and someone was supposed to come and fix my camera, and they did not. Do we have shortfalls in the categories that the money would have otherwise been used for, since we're effectively, I guess, back the envelope allocating it to enrollment revenue deficits?
So we receive so much money. So take it away. If we take away the PPP money, then we got $1 million plus. Was it $1.6 million for ESSA? Then we got another $600,000 for ESSA. So if we took all of that away, we would definitely have a shortfall. However, historically, we've done well when we've closed out each school year with a surplus. So if we were to look at, actually, I'll switch over now. If we was to go and look at cash on hand with each month, so currently in our bank account, we have $5.2 million. So if we take away the $1.1 million that we actually received, we would just have $1.1 million less. So the rest of the money we have not received. The ESSA money, some of this is reflected in our accounts receivable, and as we accrue the expense, this line will increase, and then we will draw down those funds as we go. Does that answer the question?
Not quite. Let me ask it in a different way. What if we didn't have the enrollment deficit and we had received all of the money that we received for this academic year? What would we be spending that money on? What is our opportunity?
Gotcha. Essentially, we would be spending on the same thing, because the money that we're getting is very specific, and like our ESSA money is around closing the educational gap. The thought process is our students were home for a year and a half. There's some specific needs, let it be social and emotional. So we will still have the extra case managers, the extra social workers, and if we didn't have them, then we may not be able to get the money, if that answers the question. Or we would have to figure another expenditure, let it be more laptops for students.
Okay, got it.
So at the end of the year, so this ties with Voika's question, which is, can we get a breakdown of how we're spending the money? So I literally have to show, let it be on monthly, like I just submitted a grant for our laptops. We're getting 400 laptops, right? So I literally have to submit a bill to say we spent $104,000 on laptops. The ESSA money, we've added 2 new case managers. This is their salary. This is what it's going to cost us for what is that, FICA. So, and if we don't use it, we don't get it.
Yeah, so I understand the nuance what you're saying. There's a category of money that we can only get to the extent that we need it.
Correct. Well, we've been granted
we'll
it.
have to demonstrate that we need it, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And now that we're at the balance sheet, as James said, we're strong. The biggest thing is to look at how much cash on hand. When I was with another organization, the thought process was at least have, 3 times your payroll, as well as your current liabilities. We have more than 3 times our current payroll. Our accounts payable is at $94,000. Historically, we've trended around $50,000 to $60,000 a month. We are net 30. What that means is we pay our bills within 30 days. That the shift of my time, we've been doing more HR focus, specifically myself. So historically, I've been paying, even though we're net 30, I pay, normally within 10 to 15 days. I've been letting the bills reach up to the 30 days to pay out, just due to time. But overall, we're still strong. And that's kind of it. Any other questions, thoughts?
I have a question about those laptops.
Yes.
The ones that were bought last year, did the students not bring them back with them? Were they considered throwaways? And then you're ordering 400 more, so they're being used within the school building?
So we had a significant number of laptops broke. Once we had a grant, once the grant became available that we could cover every student with a brand new laptop, it was in our interest to make sure that our students had the laptops. I think there was around $6 billion for this particular grant, and you submitted what was the need, and then they opened it back up because they had so much money left over. So now we have 180 laptops right now. The remaining 220 are going to be placed the following week. So we didn't just throw laptops away. For our exiting fifth graders, we let some of them keep some of them for those we felt that needed them, and then just the breakage. We had a high breakage.
We also, and Danny, you can get more specific about this, but we also invested in having more Chromebooks on site. We used to have, maybe a class set. Now we have them in every classroom. Plus, we have more on hand for example, for map testing. We wouldn't have had that last year. So we had multiple class sets available. So a lot of Chromebooks in the building, but then also have them at home. So if we have to go remote, suddenly they're there. That's the idea.
Yeah, each classroom has about 6 to 8, depending on classroom, for use of Lexia Core 5, which is one of our literacy programs that we're using, that we used during the pandemic and that we are continuing in. And then also, like Steve said, for the MAC testing as well, which is really helpful.
How big a problem is maintenance of this equipment? They don't seem very durable from what I'm hearing right now. And that's worrisome. Says we're gonna have to replace all of them every year. It's gonna get pretty expensive.
I think we found at school that they're pretty durable, and we found that some of the ones at home, I think it's based on usage. We have, with map testing specifically, we have now essentially 3 cart sorts so that we can have a number of classes testing at the same time. And then we have the stations in every class. We've had a couple of quarantines, as people on the board know, for entire classrooms. The laptops that we gave out last year, we've only had a small handful, and the ops team would have this data on hand. We've only had a small handful of students request a laptop. So the ones that they kept from last year, they used when they logged on remotely for our quarantines this year. So they are still being used specifically for school. And a number of them have not broken. We definitely had a lot break. We have, for this year, anyone who gets one from us, a new one, there's a specific contract with it that talks about repair costs if it exceeds a certain amount, that I believe Doug and Raquel worked on, that we implemented. We implemented it last year, but we started fresh as well this year.
All right. That's any other questions?
Doug, I'd just like to interject that I congratulate you on having a clean audit and getting rid of the stuff that was bugging us the last couple of years.
Thank you. It was a lot of work, but we did it as a team. Raquel, Pascal definitely jumped in and helped out. It was a team effort. So appreciate the acknowledgement. All right, I think that concludes the finance part.
Thank you, Doug. We do appreciate your work. And yes, it was definitely a clean audit. So that is very good as well. Thank you. And to your team.
Thank you. So I told you guys I had a team. All right, let me stop share. There we go.
Thank you. So moving on down the agenda, our old business items. The first thing on under our old business was dashboard and enrollment focus. I do want to just state ahead of Steve's report that we are going digital on our dashboard for the board. And we've requested from Steve that the work that David is doing to get that digital dashboard up and running be completed by our January board meeting. And you will have an enormous amount of data to be able to look at and to generate reports so that we can ask the important questions in advance or see the important data in advance to be able to ask appropriate questions. So, Steve?
Okay, so the story of enrollment is the main focus of the dashboard. I will say before getting into enrollment that usually we would have attendance data and COVID data. Attendance is going up, so it's been very positive, and COVID is going down, so knock wood. They have not been a focus in terms of reporting data. So the focus is enrollment. And when I say COVID's going down, we've now had, I believe it is the past 5 weeks, 455 tests of students, and all of them negative. So that's really amazing news. And I think people are taking the mitigation steps really seriously. And when we've had positive cases, we've jumped on them and been very aggressive with, following through with the DOE's protocols.
Stevie, any idea what your vaccination rate now is among the student body?
No idea. We only know that 29 kids came for the pop-up that one day. So we're working on, spreading the message, getting another pop-up, and, encouraging families and asking them to send them in. But so far, there's been a lot of skittishness. We had the majority of people were either wait and see or don't want to do it when we did some informal polling in our town halls. So we are promoting it. We are pushing it. With regard to enrollment, it's been an aggressive campaign to bring students in, but we've also seen a lot of discharges. At the next executive committee meeting, we'll talk a little bit more of a deep dive about why those discharges are happening. The majority of them are about distance. We had very little attrition a year ago, and it could be that in the remote setting, people who moved stayed when normally they would leave. This level of attrition in the first 2 months of the year is not abnormal. This, I call the September shuffle. A lot of families are like making decisions and moving around in September and into October. So we have had rates in the past of losing a student a day on average over the course of the first 2 months of the year. If this continues into November, December, then it's a concern. And there's been a little bit of a trickle of discharging this month, but we're hoping that comes to an end. But again, we'll be reporting more detail, but the majority are because of distance. I can't make it, or I can't make the commute work, or I'm moving out of state, which has been quite a trend since the spring. So we've added 34 students, but 36 have departed. And that adding 34 students has been a big lift and been an ongoing effort, and more students continue to enroll. And we're doing a lot of different things to make this number continue. So we have a second mailer since the summer that's going out, and it should have hit mailboxes, but we understand it hasn't hit yet. So it should be any day now. We'll be doing another mailer in December or January for next year's enrollment. We've been doing a lot of hitting the streets. As Doug said, we have temps and other staff members who've gone around doing a lot of flyering, canvassing, talking to people in the community, talking about our school, and various word of mouth campaigns, and asking parents and community members to talk about our school. and just showing up at a lot more community events and talking about our school. So I think those are the main strategies. Margaret, you've been a partner in thinking this through. If you want to add anything, you're welcome to step in and do that. I think that's the main report I would give about enrollment. I have a quick footnote and then comments and questions. The footnote is 3 years ago, we said we noticed that we had issues with attendance and student attrition for people who lived farther away from the school, and that the 10026 zip code was a very low portion of our students. It was like 10% of our student body, even though we're located in 10026. So we started recruiting closer to home, building relationships in the housing development right near us, and so on. And we shared that data with the executive committee last week, and it is showing that we have fewer kids coming from North Harlem and the Bronx, and more kids coming from this 10026 area code across the school. So that's nice to see. It's not a huge change. It's like 10% of the student body difference for each grade. But I think that is significant, and it does speak to the fact that our recruitment efforts can have an impact. We haven't talked at full board meetings about a full root cause analysis of why enrollment is suffering, but we've done a fair amount of that as well. And we think we have some ideas about the way we're approaching the enrollment process that we've shifted and are fixing that will help smooth the process and make it better. That will have a bigger impact on people not only enrolling and staying, but bringing their friends along with them, which was a hallmark of our enrollment in the past. You know, we had a student come, and then 5 or 6 classmates would come along, or family members would come along with the next week. We haven't been seeing that to the same extent, and I think that personal touch has been lacking in the past few years. So Marty, if you want to add anything, and others, if you wanted to add any information from the school, and then comments and questions from the board.
I have nothing to add. Thank you, Steve.
So can I just ask for some clarification? I want to make sure I am reading this correctly. So it looks like enrollment for K through 5 is still at 377 from the last report out, right?
Yep.
And at individual grade levels, it looks like there are 2 new kindergartners and 2 new 4th graders since August. Do you have a breakdown of how many students have left in each grade?
You know what, that's an erroneous, the last report was actually late September. We do, but not for this report, so we can break that down.
Okay. And then what does the enrollment picture look like in terms of impact on number of sections at grade? Because at 81, you planned for what, 3 sections per grade?
Right. We have kept it at 3 sections in each grade, K through 5, even with these changes and these lower numbers for 2 reasons. One is, well, we have the resources to do that. 2 is it's academically favorable to have the small sizes, so we'll take advantage of it while we have it. But 3, the plan is to increase enrollment, so we want to set that target and stick to it. We don't expect to fill all the seats. In the finance committee, we've had discussions about setting a target to mitigate the loss of revenue, but we don't want to overwhelm the school by targeting another 100 students coming into the building this year, which would be super disruptive.
Thank you.
And Steve, a follow-up to that, as you modestly to aggressively pursue new students coming in later in the year, usually comes with hardships for those students and some disruption for the classroom. What are you planning on doing to maximize success for students coming? Now we're halfway through November, coming in November and into January and into the spring to ensure as much as we can their success, and at the same time not disrupt the rhythm of the classroom.
Well, I think this is a question that is best answered by Dan Naviva, and I would just introduce it by saying that we're well practiced at integrating new students, and they have developed over the years a very thoughtful and careful approach to orienting new students and families. And it isn't like we throw a student in a classroom and say, now, close the door and go teach. So there is a process. I don't know if Dan or Viva, you wanted to talk about that in a few words.
Yeah, I think number one is, as we say, we are about relationships. And so any new student who comes in and their family has a chance to connect and build rapport with the teachers through the family interview process that we have, which is a really important first step. And then once the child has the opportunity to come in for assessments to see where they're at academically, socially, and emotionally, and of course, any services for IEPs or multi-language learner status, we then, depending on their academic supports, first decide, where they are, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, to provide that academic supports. And we do have 5 academic intervention specialists. And in terms of social emotional, we have our 4 social workers who have been phenomenal in supporting needs across the school, and we increased that this year. And I think that's also been a huge plus for supporting new families as they enter our community. And in terms of our multi-language learners, if any new students who are multi-language learners come, we have 2 dedicated professionals on our team supporting those students as well. And it obviously, like Steve had shared, it is an effort, and it is a change in the classroom for any new child that comes in at any mid-year point. But we do have a really strong team to be able to support those students and their families and the adjustment and transition to the school community.
Thank you, Viva.
It's hard to overstate the importance of all those personnel. We talk about adding staff members through this ESSER grant and increasing the number of people last year with the PPP, and having 5 AIS teachers when at one point there were 4, having 4 social workers when at one point there were 3, and then 2 case managers when there were 0. This is all in the past year or two. We have a neighboring school that is an elementary school, similar size, has no counselors or social workers. So they have to rely on outside contracted, personnel, and they're hoping to get one from the DOE, but that's the environment. Hundreds of schools have no social workers. And so for us to prioritize the federal money and our own budget dollars to have that team in place, I think has made a big difference. It's not easy and nothing is perfect, but I think that we've taken steps to mitigate those problems. I see a hand from Mr. Reddick.
Also, we have more people making those phone calls to families just to check on them if a student doesn't show up, because I've been doing 3 different zip codes, 130, 129, and 126. And it's interesting to be able to speak to the parents and talk to them at particular times and just tell them that we do care and we're worried and this and that. It makes them feel more comfortable.
Steve, has there been data that has supported your decision in bringing on more SEL staff?
It's hard to do a double-blind, controlled experiment.
It's not asking for.
Yeah, I know.
Right. So, I mean, how do you know that your decision was right? I mean, has it bared any fruit? And it could be anything. I'm just asking. I'm curious as to.
I mean, I think I would ask Dan and Viva what they think, but from my point of view, the school is calm and kids are happy. That's what I see in the school every day. And I'm not hearing that in the community. I'm hearing that a lot of schools are struggling. And around the country, I'm hearing that this return to campus has been really hard for a lot of students and teachers. Teachers quitting left and right. I think our teachers feel supported. They have a lot of people to turn to when they're struggling with a student. They don't know what to do. So it's anecdotal for me, but over the course of the year, our goals and outcomes are designed to gather data through surveys, through analyzing student behaviors. We haven't hit any of those milestones yet, but we will soon.
Steve, could I interject? Also, I've noticed a lot of students don't want to go home at particular times and want to stay in school, which is a key factor.
Including my daughter. She likes to go to after school and she can't go. She's not as happy.
Hello, everyone. This is Monica. I just wanted to make a note. Yes, the kids are happy. Morgan loves coming to school and she loves after school. However, I'm a little concerned about parents and their well-being. Only because I've experienced some incidents here and there at pickup and drop off where I just see some parents are a little irate. And I'm not at the school as often as before because my time is split now. However, it's almost like every time that I am there, there's something happening. And it was a little alarming to me. And I just wanted to know if we could do something or offer something to parents. Because where it may not be the kids, it may be the parents that are experiencing some breakdowns.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just wanted to share that actually we do have something in the works. I know Christina is not on the call right now, but Christina Graygram, who's one of our directors of student and family affairs, who works on our school management team, is partnering with our consultant from Bank Street. We have two consultants, Ramel is one of them, and currently they have in place 4 family opportunities for what's called like a caregiving circle for parents and guardians of children to be able to opt into to support any from a variety of topics about reflective listening, reflective caring of children, a space for the parents to come together in a virtual opportunity. And so we do have some things in place that are coming up that are going to be able to like give families the space to just connect with each other. I know Dan and I have specifically navigated a couple of different situations with families and tried to just create a space for them. It's been really challenging because families aren't in the building with us as per usual with all of our COVID restrictions, but we are working hard to make sure that different parents and guardians are getting what they need because there are a ton of challenges that different families are facing. And so we are using our resources. And so having those opportunities, those are coming up and we're gonna share more information soon about those 4 different community circles. And then also our social work team and caseworker team. I know Kendra's on the call and are really working hard to support families as well in their different needs, whether it's social emotional needs, other financial needs, and just kind of gauging where families are at. And it's not perfect, but I think we're trying to understand where people are coming from to best support them. So I really appreciate it. And I'm happy to talk further about that as well with you.
I'd also love to give a plug. I'd also love to give a plug for my parent university that I work on at the DOE. We have over 600 courses for families. Some of them are live webinars and some are pre-recorded. I'll put the link in the chat and anyone can access them. But there's some really, it's a really great opportunity to do some professional development for yourself, but it's also a really great opportunity to connect with other parents. It's been very heartwarming. We offered one last week about parent-teacher conferences, and there was a parent who was new to the city and just trying to navigate, and other parents jumped in to help. So I'll put that in the chat, Monica, but please feel free to share it with other parents as well.
Will do. Thank you, ladies.
Are parents currently allowed in the building?
No. Nobody except staff and students, essentially.
We have a meeting space by the safety agent, a conference room where we've had parent meetings if they need to be in person. But in terms of like sitting in classrooms, being in the cafeteria, touring the school, no.
And that's our decision, not like a DOE mandate for the building. Is that correct?
No, that's DOE policy. Unless things have changed and I'm not caught up on it, we've been following that from the beginning, and that's pretty standard, I think, across the city right now. My daughter's school, I can go to the main office and that's it.
Well, just to share, at Anthony's school, they have had like a back to school night for parents that are vaccinated, of course. So there is, I guess, room to do that if you needed to, if parents needed to come into the building.
Are any of the issues around parent frustration, and I don't know whether this is a question for you, Monica, that you're seeing, do you think coming from them not feeling like their issues are being addressed because they can't come in the building? They don't feel that connection anymore? Or is it just stress in general, do you think?
It appears to be stress in general, but I feel like the encounters that I've seen, if they were able to be like brought into a room and have this discussion, maybe it would not have been so big. You know what I mean? Like, it is really hard to say, but to have it out in the open like that, and parents and other kids are seeing it, it's really, I don't know, for lack of a better word, I was heartbroken when I saw some of the interactions. Let's just say that. And it can be a good feeling for kids to see adults getting loud and, what have you. So I don't know if that's possible. Like, if certain situations can be brought to a halt if it is handled quietly, I think.
Yeah, I will say there have been some specific things that have happened with adults in our community. And so to answer your question, Boyka, I think they've spanned a number of reasons. Like one of the most visible and sort of public ones was two guardians of a child who were with each other, were having an argument, but it was on school grounds. And so trying to navigate that. We do follow up with in-person meetings, but to Monica's point, it is really one of the challenging things that everything is very public right now. And so where somebody might come in midday for a meeting or to check in or to do something, or not bump into somebody else, that's been hard. And so it's been a little more reactive. And so we've been trying to figure out ways to use the whole yard to make sure we're getting those families in who have been having a hard time. We definitely preferred having a more open door policy where families were able to be in the building. So like our approach always, even our partner buildings have never let parents, or at least for the last few years, families were not allowed in the buildings, and our school was pre-COVID. And so we did prefer it that way. But yeah, we have definitely, they've been on our radar, what Monica's talking about. And I think it's been challenging because pickup right now is our whole school community and it is pretty public. So some of the things I've even mentioned are ways that we're trying to more sort of holistically care for people other than students who are in our community. And then we have been, with these one-off cases, meeting with families and leveraging the team we talked about before, whether it is social workers or other administrators who may have relationships with those families, to have in-person meetings in that room I mentioned before by the safety agent.
I definitely want to challenge you, the school in general, to find a solution where we can engage parents holistically. And I know it's not easy. There's so many logistical issues that you're dealing with, but that is a challenge, to continue to build those relationships that matter, so that our kids are not affected by these adverse events. So I'll come back around to that challenge.
We got it. We'll do it. We'll report back.
So if we could move forward, Steve, the next item for you.
Yeah, the last thing is just part of the dashboard is to mention the 3 upcoming big events tomorrow and then later this week. And then at the end of this month, we will have a station at the Holiday Lights Parade, which is going through Harlem, for positive feeling for the community. Tomorrow evening, we'll be at 111th Street in Lenox giving away hot chocolate and Harlem Link winter hats. And then the coat drive, Voika, that you are spearheading, we are collecting, we've got dozens of coats, maybe not quite 100, but dozens at the school, and we're looking to get more. And then Giving Tuesday, we'll come back to with Josh in a little bit.
Thank you, Steve. And just to piggyback on what he's saying about the coat drive, for those of you who may not know, I am doing a coat drive for another organization that I work with, which is the National Federation of Business and Professional Women. We are doing a drive actually for the displaced Afghan families. And Steve and Margaret were generous enough to incorporate the coat drive into their annual food drive. So I'm really happy to hear that you are already getting dozens of coats. That's spectacular. If anyone on the call has a coat that is in excellent condition or new that they would like to donate, please do drop it off at the school. Moving down a little bit, the monthly reporting update, the executive committee minutes. Are there any questions on those? Okay, Steve, do you have anything to add to those?
No, nothing to point out. I think everything it's covered in the rest of the board meeting.
Thank you. So turning to our new business items, Steve is, Dan or Aviva will give a presentation on our new MAP assessment system. For those of you who were not able to join in the executive committee meeting in our last one, Steve and Margaret did go over the purpose of MAP and how it works, and we will continue to go over it and talk more and more about it because it is now what's driving our accountability, and we'll have a great deal to do with our renewal. But I'll hand it over to you, Steve.
So Steve, I'll take it. The next 2 pages are our baseline MAP data for grades 1 through 5. So as Boyka mentioned, this is our first time in 8 or 9 years using MAP. In the absence of state tests, we felt it important to have a norm referenced exam that I think SUNY has always appreciated. But we adopted it this year. So this is our baseline. We currently so far have we've taken it, and the analysis to this point has been teachers comparing this to their baseline literacy data, and in the upper grades our baseline MAP data, just to see if the two streams of data were talking to each other and telling the same story, and generally they are. MAP is much more specific and sort of quantifiable. We are currently in the process of setting growth targets for each individual student. For those who weren't on the call or on the education committee call, the accountability metric is specifically that our median growth percentile is above 50%. That's SUNY's benchmark that they set. So we are setting more aggressive internal targets for each student based on what their score currently is and their current achievement status. And so we'll be setting those targets. We're adopting a second round of tests that will take place in January, which is about 5 or so weeks after our internal benchmark literacy assessment is finished. And so again, we'll have an opportunity to intervene both in the classroom level and through our RTI process with all of our assessments we do internally pre-MAP. And then we'll see our first growth data sometime around the end of January to see that students are on track to meet the targets that have been set. David is working currently to make sure that our MAP data and sort of the stream of it is able to interact with all of our test prep data that is getting underway, our F&P data, and our math, our internal math and literacy assessments from units. So that when we go to do this analysis after the next round of testing, we can compare apples to apples, see how students are doing in standard strands on our internal versus this, and vice versa. They additionally have a state test predictor, and so you can see where ours is. Like I said before, our targets for growth are higher than MAP's internal ones for us, and SUNY has placed on us. So we're confident these will show a higher predictor after our middle assessment window.
So, Dan, when will you be able to give us some more detailed information about how the data is being used school-wide, not just reporting on, reading out the performance, but in terms of what you might be changing or adding to or exploring to have the grades improve? Or have teacher performance improve as well?
Based on our most recent call with the NWEA reps, we had a call with 3 of their team members today, asking similar line of questioning around best ways to implement this in the short term and long term. Their advice is to use it as we're using it right now until the middle one, because the data we're looking at is from their 2020 norms study, which used 2016, 17, 17, 18, and 18, 19 data, obviously all pre-COVID. And so right now, they said treat it as a baseline and that it's going to all be about growth, and compared to essentially we're seeing how students are moving once they came in. So we've quantified where they are, what learning may have been lost, to use that term, and that those sort of weightier decisions about teacher performance aren't appropriate now. We set a window with how many weeks of instruction. So the teachers here, we started on the second day of school, which is 0 weeks of instruction. And so what we're looking for is what impact teacher practice and our curriculum and our interventions have on student performance as they grow over time this year, versus this snapshot that is important in giving us an information about where they are, but not necessarily about, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. It looks like Viva wants to chime in as well.
Yeah, I don't, and I apologize. I used the word teacher performance, and that is very specific, has a very specific connotation. What I meant was, how are you using it to inform their instructional delivery? When will we be able to start to hear information on not as an evaluating your teachers, but as in how is the data being used by teachers? And eventually we will want to talk about how you are supporting them, and if there are trends that show that they are needing support in their performance. But I'm talking about using the data that you have. How is it being used to really drive performance for the children and improvements? And and that could be for students, for teachers, for the academic program in general. I'm just trying to get an idea of how that's moving forward.
Yeah. Vivi, do you want me to start that? Just to respond to the question, and then I'll hand it over. So I think the short answer is, after our next window, we will be much better able to say, to compare it to what we've been doing. So right now, students took this test the first week of September, essentially through September, and we're looking for how data is comparing to our internal assessments. And so if a student takes a level 3 test, for example, now, and it's all tagged to standard, this data, while important as our baseline, at this point for our purposes of driving instruction, is old. And so what David is currently doing is making sure that when this new stream of data is coming in real time, we can immediately be turnkeying it to change things. And so we have structures in place in our schedules to specifically respond to data during the day, both in the classroom or out of it. And this data would fit in with other streams of data we currently have. Obviously is a very specific one, and they have specific next steps associated with certain performance bands for each student. Aviva, I don't know if you want to chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in addition to the professional learning day where we met with all the teachers and ourselves, we met with the math consultants to talk about our data, and teachers went on a deep dive into their individual students from their classrooms to understand what standards they're struggling with and what standards that they have done better with, and we got training on that. As Dan said, I think the data analysis time, we have this curriculum and data analysis time that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays for about an hour and 15 minutes, where teachers are with myself and Dan, along with other instructional coaches, like really focus in on specific standards that are also tied directly to math here. So we're able to actually make reteaching changes in our instructional practices for classrooms the following week for our lesson plan. So teachers are able to actually take that data and make those changes. And I think we'll see it, like Dan said, with the growth And we've decided that for MAP, we're going to do grades 1 through 5. We'll do another round of MAP testing in this winter band. And so that is a change responding to data that we have seen and responding to just kind of the board's directive around just wanting to be able to see that growth. And so we are going to have another opportunity to see what the data is telling us based on the growth. And so that'll be exciting for us and also really important for us to make some instructional changes for the classrooms and also like any changes to coaching structures for faculty members who may need more support.
One additional question. I know that in the last education committee, we talked about the upcoming meeting with the MAP vendors and whether or not they would be able to offer any data with respect to the other use their product to sort of give us a comparison. Were they able to do that?
No, we did have that meeting. That was today. They're slightly defensive about it. They're very nice, but they will not give us any data outside of their norm studies. They do have a COVID, they didn't want us to call it a study, but a white paper or something that studied potential learning loss from COVID, that they also cautioned us not to read a ton into because there were schools in certain parts of the country that were in person. But they told us in black and white terms, we would not be getting any data from fall of 2021 and that no assessment vendors would offer schools that data. There are premium reports that can give us more detailed information than our account currently allows us related to how we compare to schools with similar demographic profiles and things like that. She told us, again, to wait until the winter because right now, she's like, it's all based on growth essentially. So to take it now is, it wouldn't be telling us a lot. And based on how we're looking at it for our accountability benchmark and looking at how much students are growing, sort of accepting where they are and then figuring out how we're going to accelerate their growth. So there are other reports that we can look into paying for that will give us more detailed information if this isn't satisfying sort of what everybody needs.
Yeah, because I mean, we do have the growth metric, but the growth metric is comparison. So we do need data to sort of gauge the comparison metric.
Say that one more time.
I said, I agree with you. I mean, the metric is growth, but it's
right.
Comparison of growth. So we do need some way to, eventually access that information.
Yeah. So the data that they will give us in terms of comparison will be, they'll be able to tell us how each one of our students compares to a student in the same grade who's had the same amount of weeks of instruction in between testing windows for the next one. So that's the data they'll give us. They will not be able to tell us how we compare it to students in the Southwest or a suburban, rural, or urban area, red state, blue state, any of that stuff. So, but my understanding is those reports are available should we want it. I'm trying to figure out all the different data that would be helpful for us. Our data, we're compared to the whole country and students with a similar profile, and they do not, SUNY, to my understanding, is not taking into consideration any of those demographic details. That is just based on the conditional growth, which is the weeks of instruction and the grade. And so, I'm not sure, obviously more data the better, but I'm not sure tactically how we would use it at this point.
Understood.
Another thing I would add is looking at that study from last year's data, one of the key findings that MAP publicized or NWA publicized was the missing data was significant, that students who were disadvantaged, whether it's poverty or any other metric, were less likely to have taken MAP last year. So their data is missing. So any learning loss is also not reflective of students who probably fell further behind the pandemic from what other reports are saying.
Are you finding that our students who are economically disadvantaged or have other disadvantages have fallen far behind? Have you looked at the data in that way, or is it only by grade?
You mean in terms of comparing to our students who are not economically disadvantaged?
Right. So like right now I'm looking at the charts that you have up, they're by grade.
Yeah.
Right. So we know grade performance, but has it been disaggregated so that we know what our different demographic, categories are achieving or not achieving? Like, can we?
It's not in this data, no, and we don't currently have it by demographics. So
you don't know, for example, the difference between how your L's or your SPED children have performed compared to one another?
David is taking, so the way MAP is set up is we can plug in accommodations for L's or for students who have IEPs. Their reports come out as either CSVs or PDFs. David has taken that and David, if he's still on the call, can chime in. But when I was talking about like making sure that data is talking to each other, we have that indicator on there so it can be tagged to, we have all those subgroups tagged in our own internal data system. So this would be a stream that goes into that and we can absolutely get those reports out. So when I was saying like integrated with test prep and with our, our math assessments, that's the work David's doing behind the scenes right now. So I guess short answer is understanding the question better now. Yes, we will be able to have those reports for you. They're not currently crunched.
But just to, I guess, reassure and just let the board know that we are taking the data seriously across subgroups for all of our data for our level 3, which is our unit test data, our FMP, our reading assessment data. We look at that data based on subgroups and we look at students who are receiving AIS academic intervention. We look at students who are getting special education services. We look at students who are multilingual learners. And so we are doing that ongoing work, but we can definitely make sure to have, like Dan said, that data from MAP specifically available to you.
And Aviva, did you say you would have it emailed? Did you just say that?
We can have it available to you. What would be
best available?
Would it be best to have Steve email the board with updated charts, or would it be best for the next meeting? Or
well, when you have it, it's best if you upload it into the shared drive so that all the board members can access it.
I also want to ask David just where, because I know you took the data from NWEA site and translated it into your process, and so I'm not sure what the lift is on that end, David, in terms of turnaround.
We could do that quite easily. We're used to looking at disaggregate subgroups with all of our unit tests, and I've placed the map data into the same format. So just as I've shown you the data by grade, I could very easily take that same chart and make it by any of your subgroups, as many as you would like.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Dan and Aviva. The next item on the agenda is the accountability plan.
Yeah, I'll address that. I should have not taken off my shared screen because I have to use a visual for that. So it's just a quick note to the board that the Education Committee discussed this, and we are working on a collaboration with SUNY to modify our accountability plan, taking out these 2 optional measures in yellow. One is in ELA and one is in math. The 2 optional measures were added in as part of our conditional renewal or renewal with conditions 4 years ago, and they weren't required for us to add, but the Institute offered us the opportunity to have more chances at hitting accountability metrics by having a 6th key measure, and there are formally 5 ELA, 5 math measures. These are criterion referenced, which means that they're in the absolute category. So if you look at the 6 different measures, there's absolute, comparative, and growth. Absolute is measured against a benchmark. So we use our internal measures, FMP for ELA, and our math assessment for math. And the idea was to hit those targets, over the course of the 5 years of the charter. Well, we now have MAP, which is a more valid and reliable assessment, and SUNY kind of sealed the deal by promoting MAP and iReady in June when they were talking about how we're dealing with the lack of state test scores. So we brought in MAP because we have no state test data for 2 years. And we want something that's external to give us a look at where our students are and how they're progressing and whether our program is working. So working with SUNY, we are looking to adopt their framework for using MAP as an accountability metric and replacing our current absolute metrics with a different one that they have worked to create for MAP. And those metrics are growth metrics. So right now we have one growth metric in ELA and one growth metric in math. And these are sort of mandated by SUNY, written by SUNY. And what would happen, we would lose that absolute metric and we would replace it with another growth metric for MAP that looks very similar to this one that's currently there for the state tests. And translated into English, what that metric means is that we're better than average at showing student growth. The 50th percentile is the middle. So half the kids do better, half the kids do worse. And we want to be above that in ELA and math on the state tests, and now ELA and math in MAP if SUNY accepts that change, which they're promoting. So anything anyone from the staff wants to add, or any questions or comments that we get?
I will just add for all the board members that, again, the Education Committee is also going to be doing a deep dive, and this topic will come back up over and over as we plan and make adjustments. So if it, if it sounds, like a foreign language right now, don't worry, you will definitely get more and more information, and it'll become more and more familiar to you as we go along. Thank you, Steve. Next on the agenda is the Fund Development Giving Tuesday by Josh.
Hey everyone, how's it going? So thank you for that, Voika. This shouldn't be too long. So as we previewed earlier, Giving Tuesday is coming up. It is happening on November 30th. That is when we do the big push. We're doing the same kind of fundraising campaign as we normally do every single year, which is the person to person. I gave the spiel last time, but just so it's lodged in your heads, everyone makes their own individual fundraisers. They reach out to their networks, and it's all gathered and put together on the hub page. Since last time, that has all come together. I'm dropping it in the chat right now. We are currently making our fundraisers as we speak. The board members that have donated so far, I'm going to be applying them to the different donation pages that we have so far. Of course, we would like to have 100% board giving and support for Giving Tuesday. As a heads up, Network for Good, as donations get bigger, they take a bigger chunk out of it. So if you want all of your donation counted, send it directly to Doug and he will report to me. Check, money order, all that stuff works. I'll let Doug chime in if he has a preferred method, but Network for Good is also a great way to donate as well. But in the coming weeks, we will be spreading out a little bit. We'll be doing our soft launch a little bit next week, telling people that we have these pages. Tomorrow is a staff meeting. We'll be unrolling it to them as well, allowing them to make their pages. And yeah, it seems like we're all set up. The MailChimp newsletter is ready to go as a reminder on the day. And I'll keep everyone posted about what's kind of going on. I believe our next board meeting will be a week after, or 2 weeks after Giving Tuesday. So we'll give everyone the final number of how we did and what's going on. So does anyone have any questions or would like to be more involved?
So I'm just going to add, those of you on the board who've not given yet, you might get a little communication from me. We would love to have 100% participation from the board. for Giving Tuesday, regardless of the amount. If you are interested in setting up your own page, Josh is a great resource. If you're not, but you want to direct them somewhere, Josh can either direct them to his page, to my page, to others. But this is really, we did really well last time, and we hope to do even better. Each of the last 2 Giving Tuesdays, we've seen a real uptick, and we're looking for that yet again. And it's Doug, I don't think Doug is Doug still on? No. All right, just remind Doug, let's be poised for wire transfers and stock transfers.
We have that information. It's all set, Ken. I'll be sharing it with you this week.
Okay, great. And Josh and team, great job on putting this together. It looks really, really good.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing how this works out the next few days. I have easy instructions. It takes like less than 5 minutes to set up your page, but if you want to be involved in other ways or you have questions about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, jbreitbart@harlemlink.org.
And if you're looking to incentivize teachers and staff, hopefully this year we can do it in person. I'll give a couple of wine events for teachers and staff.
Excellent. If any other board members have prizes to donate as well as a way to rally our teachers and staff, very, very cool, and we really appreciate it so much.
And just if I can piggyback on, I did make my page and it was super, super easy. So thank you for all the back work, Josh. That was great. I appreciated it. Only took 5 minutes, not even.
Thank you, Boyka. Any last questions? Fantastic. Look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you. So our last item on the new business agenda is the 2021-22 board schedule. The schedule that is in effect is kind of and I had a conversation with Steve about this. It seems as if the general board meetings are fairly well scheduled and they're all in the evening. But the other meetings, committee meetings, executive committee meeting, they happen at all different times. So I wanted to be sure that we add some balance and consistency to it. So I don't know how the rest of you are feeling about the schedule. Is it working for you? Is it not working? Do you want more balance and more consistency? I will say that the education committee, I think, needs to definitely be sure that all members can participate fully based on its schedule. But we don't need an answer today. But by, I think, next board meeting, we should come up with a plan. And Steve, did you have something additional to add to that?
No, scheduling is one of the worst punishments known to man. So have fun, Boyka, if you want to shift the schedule.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's super important considering all the work that will need to be done in the collaborating around renewal. It's really important that we get as many voices from the board in the meetings. So I will send out some maybe feelers and questions, and if the board doesn't mind sending back some replies on what they think about scheduling and what works for each of the committees. Does that sound fair? Okay, I see heads nodding, at least 2 down below. All right, so if there are no other items for the general board meeting, does anyone have anything that they wanted to bring up in general? If not, we can move into executive session. Okay. Steve and Ken, I am unable to do the, thank you, Nermeen. I am unable to do the breakout rooms for those who might want to stay from my phone.
I can have it. So are you
Steve, are you the host? You're the host?
I was the co-host, Steve is the host. If you want to pass it to Ken, maybe he can.
No, Steve can do it.
I can do it, and I'll join that room. So we're gonna have
Okay.
one breakout room. That'll be the non-voting trustee room, and then
Right.
I'll join that. And then if you send me a message, a text, I can bring us back.
Perfect, thank you.
Or maybe as co-host, Ken, I'll make you co-host too, if you can bring us back.
Okay.
Okay. So when you're ready to step out, you can either step out of the meeting and leave, or you can join the breakout room where we'll have a little music and maybe some wine, although I'm not going to have any wine here at the school building.
Bye, guys.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, David.
I promised there would be music, so I've got my music going.
Uh-huh.
It's about to start. There we go. So, David,
Just to close.
Okay.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. The executive committee voted to accept the nominations for board service for Ms. Nermeen Ahmad, Ms. Natasha Howard, and Ms. Samantha Diaz. So we congratulate all of them, and they will be notified, and that they are welcome. But in closing out tonight's board meeting, does anyone have any other issues they would like to bring up or discuss?
for the minutes, sorry.
Yeah, wait, particularly for the minutes, it isn't the executive committee, it was the board members that unanimously approved.
Okay,
The
that's
executive.
what I was going to ask. Was it unanimous? Because we should note that for the minutes.
Yeah, and it was the board, not the executive committee.
Thank you. Correction noted, it was the board, not the executive committee, that voted in the 3 new candidates. Okay.
Well, this is very exciting. And so the next step is once all their paperwork is in order and I have to receive some files from them, as soon as we get them, we'll turn them right over to SUNY. It might take as long as a month, so they might not be seated at the December meeting. It's possible. SUNY does tend to act quickly, but the time limit is 45 days from the time when they receive it. If they don't act in 45 days, they'll automatically receive it.
But they may attend, they can begin committee work as well.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They just don't have their vote.
Yeah,
Vote is already
okay,
started.
yeah.
And just, I think all 3 of them have sent back the board form with their resumes. And so I think the only thing you need from us is the minutes from this evening. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, I'll confirm that I have all 3 of them.
Okay. All righty.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Pete, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
There's one more question, which is who's notifying them? Would you like to do that quick?
I will be notifying them. I'll CC everybody on it. I will be notifying them.
Okay, terrific.
Before everyone hangs up, I move to close this meeting, adjourn the meeting.
I second. You sure do.
All right, thank you. Good night to everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good to see
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Night.